So I'd like to introduce you to our afternoon workshop presenters. We have Emily Glossop from the Ability Center, we have Anna White from Awesome Ottawa, and we have Ashley Hilliard from the Ottawa Children's Treatment Center. They're going to spend the afternoon talking to you about some strategies on making your sporting organization more inclusive.
We have all been engaged in running and facilitating and developing programs for children with disabilities, children and youth. Really, it's to focus on the abilities. We have always focused on the ability of every individual client or child or youth who comes through the door. The next slide is really just about the language we're using, and it's clear that everyone in this room has been using person-first language, and that it's people first, respectfully put the person before the disability. So that's the language we'll be using this afternoon.
And we realize that language is constantly changing, and so one of the best ways to kind of overcome that constant change is just to always put the person first and the disability second.
Yeah, I'm Anna. I work with Awesome. I'm the Director of Programs and Training there. I've been with Awesome since the very beginning, and Lisa Vexler and I came together to create a program that's barrier-free for kids with autism. So we've done basketball, soccer, water polo, gymnastics. We're doing a running program that actually is happening right now, dance. So we're all over the community in different settings. We also do community training, team building, and we also teach physical literacy skills to kids that maybe need those pre-sport skills before they're able to actually do basketball, soccer. So we're looking to enrich the lives of families living with autism. Excuse me.
My name is Ashley Hilliard. I am a recreation therapist at CHEO. When Emily isn't doing Ability Center stuff, she is also a recreation therapist at CHEO, so Emily and I are on the same team. We run various recreation programs to really help kids with physical disabilities, developmental disabilities, and on the autism spectrum gain skills. And so we really survey kind of who is on our caseload, where are referrals, and then we plan programs often with community people that are able to support the kids to help them gain skills. And so we not only run lots of adapted sport opportunities, we run arts programs and music programs. We run a program that LA referred to this morning as our Give It a Go program. So it's really an opportunity for kids to get to try new activities. When I tell parents about it, I call it a risk-free trial. You don't have to buy the equipment. You don't have to sign up for an 8-week program that your kid hates and lose your $200 registration fee. Come out with us, try it once. If they like it, you can join that program in your community. So it's a great option for our kids. Another example of a skill-based program we run is right now I'm running a rock climbing program, and that program is for anybody that's ambulatory. So anybody that can walk, and we are working on lots of different skills, everything from being part of a group to gross motor to overcoming your fears.
I'm Emily Glossop, and I don't think you need an explanation of what the Ability Center Ottawa is. As you know, we are working very hard to build a second Ability Center in Canada, here in Ottawa. And so we've been partnered with the Ability Center in Durham for the last few years since they opened their doors, and we're hoping to build the second one here. And we're also working to help create a template for replication across the country, because when Jim Flaherty cut the ribbon at the opening ceremonies in Durham, he stated that he believed there needed to be an Ability Center in every major city across the country. So we're trying to help do that.
So we're going to kind of go through this part quickly because we have a fairly educated audience on what you might see. And we really want to get into the tips and tricks that might help some of these things. So with athletes with autism, you might see difficulties with communication that can range from very limited verbal skills to completely typical language. Maybe that's just an issue with the back and forth of a social conversation. You might see repetitive behavior, hand flapping. We also have kids in the gym that like to follow the lines on the gym floors. You might see rocking, hands in the ears, hands in front of the eyes. You might see some kids that have really, really fixated thoughts. They're very interested in certain things and can't get off certain topics. But that also comes with an intelligence that's usually very above average. Then the biggest thing, and I think that in the training that we've done in our other community programs, is that a lot of people aren't aware of how sensory issues may or may not affect a kid with autism. So some kids are hypersensitive to lights, sounds, where others are hyposensitive. So they're looking for extra input. And depending on where they fall on that spectrum, that can affect them in an athletic setting in different ways. Really, for kids with autism, you know, we can ask the kid to change so much, but it's how we change the environment that we're really going to talk about, and some strategies that you guys can use, whether you're just integrating one child or it's a whole adapted program. These strategies are super helpful.
We have athletes with a physical disability. So you may have athletes who require assistive devices, wheelchairs, walkers, communication devices, anything modified for activities of daily living. You may require athletes who may require adapted sporting equipment, such as sit skis, sledges, racing chairs, bikes, trikes, and guides. That's one additional piece of equipment, and I call myself a piece of equipment. I was a guide on the national team for an athlete with a visual impairment for a number of years. And then athletes may require variations to participation, so the use of sound, visuals, and or just individualized modifications to the equipment that they're using. And in terms of sounds, some examples are goal ball, where you have a bell inside the ball, or beat ball, which we're already talking about starting up. Can't wait. And then there's a classification system. So for those who are aware of the Paralympic model in sport, there is a classification system to determine an athlete's eligibility in the Paralympic sport. And so it really takes the person's disability, basically their ability levels and their skills and strengths, and classifies them into a specific classification in order to make an even playing field. But I want you to understand that classification system, it allows for individual athletes who are able-bodied. So myself, I actually played wheelchair basketball. I'm an able-bodied athlete. I'm classed as a 4.5, and it's totally inclusive. And I think that's something that's really important to go out of today, recognizing that so many of these sports are fully inclusive, and we need to ensure that all children are aware of that. And so I had a little story from yesterday's Parasport Day at the school, and it came up in one of Marco's slides when he was talking about the accessibility and accessible equipment, and how Jumpstart is looking at ensuring that equipment is available. And one of the kids in the program said, so, you know, is there like a store where like a Parasport equipment store or something that I can go and pick myself up a wheelchair? I was like, no, actually there's not. And do you happen to have $5,000? So that was just a really interesting concept on behalf of these students who are being introduced to a brand new sport. They loved it so much. He wanted to go out and buy himself a piece of equipment so that he could participate in the sport himself. It's also recognizing that most of the sporting organizations in our community already have that equipment available for people to use and to try out their sports before they decide that they want to pursue it.
So athletes with developmental disabilities, things that you may see are difficulty transitioning from one task to another. So we often call that a preferred activity to a non-preferred activity. Athletes who have difficulty focusing or listening, and may require their instructions to be in concise, short blocks. So the example that I often use is in a day camp setting. I need you to go and put your lunch bag away. I need you to grab your backpack. Inside your backpack, I need you to grab your towel, and then I need you to line up. And all of a sudden, you'll have a small child with Down syndrome who has done none of that and has lined up at the door. So a technique you can use is, I need you to go and put your lunch bag away and then come back and see me, right? So they go put the lunch bag. I need you to go to your backpack and get your towel, and then I need you to come back and see me. And so that's an example of how changing the way that you give instructions may change the way that you're able to get the kids to flow through the activity. Athletes who have difficulty organizing their thoughts and their personal belongings, sometimes a slower processing speed, so what they're trying to say. They may present that way, as well as personal belongings. So that kid who, has their backpack, it's open, they're dragging their towel, their water shoes, their bathing suit, and their lunch behind them in some sort of disorderly fashion. So, and again, with the feelings and emotions, so may have difficulty telling you exactly what they're feeling and why, and sometimes may not know why they're feeling that way. And then a lot of times our kids with a developmental disability, they kind of lack the intrinsic motivation to participate in an activity. So it may not necessarily be that they can't or don't want to. It just may be that the motivation isn't always there. And so it may be being extra motivating or kind of getting down to their level and figuring out how you can get them engaged in the activity.
You'll see that with all these things you might see, they could obviously create some barriers to fully participating in sports. So we're going to talk about the brain barriers and then also the body barriers. So a lot of our kids, just before they're coming down the hall to the gym, there's a lot of fear about the unknown of what they're about to do or who they're going to meet. So sometimes just getting them through that door into the gym or onto the field is tricky because there's a lot of fear surrounding that.
Difficulty transitioning, so like we said, not having the ability to end an activity and move on. And something we kind of missed is anybody that runs any sort of integration or inclusion program, some of these techniques that we're going to present you with will work really well for typically developing kids as well.
All of them.
Yeah. So yeah, difficulty transitioning or don't do well with sudden transitions. So no warning, they're really enjoying being in the pool and all of a sudden it's get out of the pool now, right? So they have difficulty with being told right then and there that what they love is ending.
So you can also imagine for kids who are hypo or hypersensitive, coming into a loud, busy gym with bright lights, new people, there's fear there, but their sensory systems can be overloaded and that can cause anxiety, can cause meltdowns. So that's tough for a lot of kids.
So have very much black and white thinking around winning and losing rules to a game. Can also really want kids to play by their rules. A phrase that we've kind of coined is perceived injustice. And so very much perceiving that the other kids in the game are out to get them or want them to lose or want them to fail. And that's a term that we use a lot as well. And so, and we try and be one step ahead of the game in situations like that. And so if we do have a group of kids, some with autism, some not, some with a developmental disability right now or not, we're watching to see what's happening to potentially intervene before we have a full-on 7-year-old brawl on our hands. So,
for kids who have communication issues or trouble understanding language, so receptive issues, there's so many instructions given in a sporting or athletic environment that they could easily miss. And a lot of times, inappropriate behavior may just be a result of not understanding what's going on. So we're going to help you be aware of that in ways that you can change the language that you use in delivering instructions to create an environment that's more successful.
So difficulty focusing. We're seeing more and more kids in our experience who have dual diagnosis, so maybe diagnosed on the autism spectrum, but also have ADHD or ADD. And you can imagine with all the sensory stuff that Anna was talking about, if in a room like this, you can hear the noise of the lights, or you can hear everything that's going on around the building, and then also trying to focus on someone giving a presentation or providing the rules can be very difficult for a lot of our kids with sensory issues.
So in terms of the body, when it comes to barriers to participation, there can be challenges with gross motor, so it might be underdeveloped in some athletes, making it difficult for them to run, jump, throw, catch, or more, and it can also impact safety. So that's one thing to also recognize. Fine motor skills may be underdeveloped in some athletes, making it challenging for them to grasp equipment or pick up items, hold a stick or a racket. Balance and coordination can be affected, where an athlete might require assistance or support and or adapted equipment to provide success and safety. Reaction time can be affected. It could be slower, it could be uncontrolled. And spatial awareness. So athletes may not be aware of how their bodies move in space, and that can affect, and how one movement can affect another. And Anna had indicated some inappropriate behavior may be due to not understanding the instructions, but we have also found that some of our children may be perceived as inappropriate behavior. It's because they don't understand how their bodies are moving in space, and they don't understand how to work with their joints in order to make a jump or land a jump. And so it has to be broken down for them. Ability to control movement can be limited and or absent. And one other really important thing to note is that some kids with disabilities just may never have had experience playing sport ever before. And so it could be their first time. They've never been part of a program where they got to develop their fundamental movement skills. And so they just might not be aware.
We're having more and more parents tell us even that kids are being pulled out of recess because that unstructured time is a complete disaster for them, and so they spend recess and lunch hour getting into trouble because they aren't sure how to manage the unstructured time. And so because of that, gym class can be much the same. Like Emily said, they just don't have the experience because they're, being told to stay inside. Yeah. Or
there's not always just challenges. A lot of kids, especially with autism, have a great ability to hyper-focus and zone in on one thing in particular. And if that's sports or a component of sports, they can use that to their advantage to succeed. So, some kids that are fixated on getting that basketball net, that ball in the net, they'll take the whole hour until they get it. And once they have it, they have it. Like we've had one girl in our basketball program that she wasn't really interested in following the rest of the activities until she got that basketball in the net. And then once she did, it was like, okay, she's got it and she had it. And now she was able to participate in the rest of the game, and she came a really far way. So the same thing goes for being determined and creative. And Emily has some cool stories about kids with physical challenges.
Yeah, and just their determination to succeed, their determination to find creative ways and problem solve with us as staff as to how they are going to succeed in whatever the activity is. And this is where it's so important to involve them in the problem solving process. They know themselves best. It's also important to involve parents in this process. They also know their child best. And so what is going to work? And we are extremely creative in recreation therapy.
Just a note about adapting your program is that it takes a lot of preparation before the program actually starts. It's not a matter of just throwing a kid into an adapted program. What you can understand about them ahead of time and how you can alter the environment to set them up for success is going to be really, really valuable to you. So what we're going to go over is building rapport or embedding interest, the kids' interest into your setting. How you're going to maximize structure. So like Ashley was saying, that unpredictable recess time where it's like, I don't know what's happening. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. So we're going to minimize that. And how do we do that? Then helping when they need it. How do you help a kid through a sequence that they may not be able to coordinate their body to do? And then how does the kid know that they did the right thing? What sort of feedback are you providing to them so that they know that they're being successful? So building rapport. First things first, you need the kids or the athletes that you're working with to like you. And it goes for all coaches in a variety of settings. You're going to work harder for the people that you like. It's the same for teachers and therapists. It's just you need to have the kid and their interests at the front of your mind all the time. So pairing teaches the child or the athlete to associate you, the teacher, the coach, the environment, and the material with good things. They're going to be more likely to take a step through that door if they know that on the other side of it, good things are going to happen. And they're going to be more likely to listen to you if they know that you're a provider of good things. So getting to know your athlete, you need to learn how they communicate. You need to learn how their body works, learn where they need extra help and where they may be completely independent. But first, you need to have fun, and you need to be creating a positive environment. So everybody always asks, they look at these pictures and they say, like, why is the laughing cow, the cheese laughing cow up in there? We had a guy in baseball who was not interested in participating in any component of our program. And so we had asked his mom to send some things along that he really liked. So this is the preparation piece that I'm talking about. We knew that this might be a struggle. What can we do to get out in front of this? So she sent along pictures of the laughing cow, and those were something that he really, really liked. So we helped him swing the bat. He hit the ball, and then he had to run to first to go collect his picture of the laughing cow, and then run to second, go collect your picture of the laughing cow, run to third, collect your picture of the laughing cow, and run home. And he gets like a party, and he has all these cows, and that was great. He participated. We embedded an interest that he liked. He was successful, and then after that, he was more willing to participate in all the other drills that we had, because he knew that it was going to be fun and that what he was interested in was involved in that process. So you need to be aware of the good things that you're delivering, but you also need to be aware of the number of demands you're placing. And when I say that, when you meet somebody for the first time, hi, how are you? What did you do this morning? Oh, I like your shirt. What color is that? Oh, do you want to come over here and grab a ball? All of those sort of things are actually demands. And for somebody who may have some language processing issues, that can be overwhelming. So to be aware of demands that you're placing initially when you're meeting new athletes or you're meeting new kids is really valuable. And the bottom note there is, when you're paired well or you've built rapport with an athlete, for kids that are maybe a little bit more challenging, you're going to increase the likelihood that they're going to comply and that they're going to participate. So this may seem trivial, but it's probably the most important component to the tips and tricks that we're going to share with you is really get to know what your athletes enjoy and how can you make that a part of what they're learning. Maximizing the structure, and I'd love to hear some feedback from you guys on how you do these in your own environment. But there are some tricks that you can take and apply to any setting. So you want to think, when the kid is stepping onto the field or whatever environment it is, when they're coming into the gym, have a plan for them from the moment they cross that threshold. When at Awesome, when they come into the gym, we have a method from how the athlete is taken from their parent or guardian to meet their coach, and how that transition into the gym looks, so that we're setting them up for success from the moment that their foot steps in there. So a big part of an athletic environment is delivering instructions and how you're going to teach skills. So these are some tips that we have in just if you're teaching to throw a ball, how are you going to do that? So one thing that always really, really works, and if you could just go to the next slide really quick and then we're going to go back. You want to bring the kids as much as you can to a neutral and consistent location. And when I say that, if you're in a gym, we use the circle on the floor in the middle. And anytime that something new is going to happen where the kids have to listen and, okay, now this is the time that I'm not moving, I'm attending to an instruction, we bring them to this spot, and always this spot in this gym. So that over a 6-week and 8-week program, they know that when I'm sitting here, I'm listening. I'm not bouncing the ball. I'm not throwing the ball. I'm not kicking the ball. I'm listening and I'm attending. So what we're doing there is we're trying to eliminate a lot of the extra stimuli that may be going on for them, so they can focus in on the coach. And so this is at the JCC. We use this round circle. But if you don't have a space that has a defined zone, it could be a body position. Every time they're taking a knee, they're listening, or their hands are on their head. A lot of teachers use that. Or some teachers use the hand over their mouth. And it's just this idea that signals, okay, now I listen. You want to be, like I said, you want to be really cautious of your language for kids who have processing issues. So being specific and direct, and always giving a model to show. So that's why I call it telling and showing rather than show and tell. So for kids who maybe are struggling to understand, well, she said I need to move my arm like this, but I don't even know what that part of my arm is. Bend your elbow. I don't know where my elbow is. If you're showing them and you're pairing that language with a model, there's a higher chance for success, rather than going on a big long tangent about what you had for breakfast and then coming back to, and then you're going to throw your hand like this. That may be hard to follow. And we've had coaches that we've had to rein in where it's like, we're not talking about that, just let's get back to the skill. Be direct, be specific, use words that you can repeat often so that they start developing this contingency between the body and the words. What's expected and what are the words that you're giving me? Speak literally, avoid sarcasm, especially for kids with autism. This is tricky, you know. I had one swim coach who said, all right, buddy, this one's for all the marbles. This one's for all the marbles. And he's like, what marbles? Like, and then it was, we're not swimming. Where are these marbles? I need to find these marbles. And he just meant like, okay, you really got to do this one, right? So just to be aware of that language and how you're delivering instructions is super valuable. You can maximize structure in your setting by using these visual cues. And gymnastics is a really good example. I don't know if there's any gymnastics people here. No? Like these hands and feet that you see down in the corner, gymnastics gyms have those everywhere. So that helps you as the athlete or the learner know, this is where I put my feet and this is where I put my hands. So there's a higher chance of success on that one activity or that one drill just because they've taken away the unknown there. Now I know what to do. I know where to go. And if your athlete doesn't know what they should be doing, that's your opportunity as a coach to break down the task to figure out where is this error actually happening and what are you going to do when you find exactly where that error is happening. Like Emily was saying, some kids have trouble coordinating their bodies. So if we're getting them to do complex obstacle courses or dribbling, shooting, passing, there's so many things going on. What component of that drill is the child or the athlete really struggling with, and how are you going to help that piece? We'll talk about in the next few slides. But having clear rules or boundaries, and by boundaries I mean time frames. So rather than saying, okay guys, go run, okay, run 2 laps. So there's an expectation and the unknown, like, well, a lot of kids will just say, well, I'm not going to run because I don't know when it's going to end. But okay, I can do 2 laps. So you can use countdowns, timers, anything like that to put a boundary on a thing that may be open-ended or unknown. This is a super, super helpful little tip rather than just, okay, do jumping jacks. Count them down, 5, 4, 3. A kid's more likely, and you as well, are more likely to complete that if you know where the end is. Because some of these things are work and they're challenging, especially if you're dealing with communication issues, body issues. They're extra difficult. So when they know where that end point is, they're more likely to try harder for you. These little squares, these visual things, like first then, so that people know what's going to happen, or the one below it, first this, then this, then this. So first we're going to run laps, and then we get to shoot hoops, or whatever it is in your setting. First maybe the tricky thing, and then the more enjoyable thing. Again, so they know what's coming. So you want to get out in front of problems. I call that, it's in the behavior world, it's called antecedent control. You're kind of controlling the environment, like I was saying. You're preparing ahead of time. What might go wrong? How can I change what I'm doing to avoid a problem? So you can prepare your athletes for what they're going to expect. Little videos or even an email to the parents. You can tell your athlete, here's where you're going to be going, here's what that's going to look like. You can also, you want to anticipate a meltdown if you know a kid well and you know that there's certain things that he or she may have trouble with. What can you do to modify the environment ahead of time so that you can avoid that meltdown rather than trying to always deal with it? So we had one kid in our basketball program that they dribble and they have pennies in their shirts, and so the goal is to get them to keep their head up and try to go get another penny from another player. And this one kid was just getting so frustrated that his penny kept getting taken. And that's the point of the game, right? You get your penny taken, you go get another penny. So to get out ahead of it for the next time, we just made a really clear statement. If someone takes your penny, stay calm, it's okay, go get another one. And just by saying that ahead of time, it was like, oh, like you had said, it's not, he just didn't understand. He thought that there had been some injustice, that someone took his penny and I need to tell somebody, and it was the worst day ever. And we said, no, you just go get another one. So just anticipating that for next time.
Well, and it's giving a positive directive as opposed to saying, no, don't do that, right?
Exactly.
So we always say, like, we use no, don't, and stop in emergencies only. So if a kid is running into traffic, then we're going to say no, don't, or stop. If a kid is having a meltdown or isn't able to follow the instructions, we're going to give them a positive directive. So we're going to tell them what to do. Like Anna just said, stay calm, get another penny, right? Yeah. Or as opposed to don't stand on the table, please put your feet on the floor.
Yeah, and that's
right?
That last point there. Tell your athletes what they should be doing rather than what they shouldn't be doing. And I use the example of kicking a soccer ball. We're always trying to get our kids to kick with the inside of their foot. And that's really, really tricky to not kick with your toe. And so it's your natural instinct to say, no, don't kick with your toe. But then it's left like, well, then what am I supposed to do? So instead it's just be like, kick with the inside of your foot rather than saying, no, don't. So that's just a helpful little strategy.
So in terms of modifying the environment, sometimes this can be easy and sometimes it can be challenging, depending on where you are. For our programs with CHIO and Legacy OCTC, we are constantly running programs in the community. We are finding our partners, we are out and about, and it's sometimes really challenging to be prepared for what comes in the community when it comes to accessibility. So you're trying your best to make sure your environment meets the physical accessibility needs of your athletes. So accessible parking for the parents, accessible entrance, accessible washroom facilities, appropriate space required. A lot of places will think that they are accessible, and then you get inside and it's actually not as accessible as you had hoped. So we do a lot of pre-planning, a lot of visits to determine accessibility in our sites. Availability of adapted and or modified sporting equipment, and as Stuart said this morning, the variations, looking for variations, making sure there are options available in terms of the equipment and supplies available. Sometimes we have some additional supplies ready for modifications if need be, cushions, straps, that kind of thing. So we are trying to also ensure a sensory friendly environment. So as mentioned numerous times, you have to be really aware of the environment around you and recognize that there are sensory inputs that are coming in from all areas. So, that light over there, it is shining in my eyes and it's quite bright. And then there's, this buzz coming from my mic. Those are all things you need to be aware of. Ensure the availability of a quiet space. So it's always nice to just know that you have a quiet space to go to if need be. You might not need it, but it's nice to know you have it.
The going to your space ahead of time is so valuable to, again, getting out in front of a problem and anticipating what could go wrong. If you have flight risks, you know what doors that you might have to block. You may need to think, okay, I need more people to help in this environment. It's too open, it's too close to the road, or there are way too many fire alarms.
Purell dispensers.
Yeah, like all of these things that you can look at and try to see through different eyes and how the environment may be interpreted differently than how you're interpreting it, and what you can do to change it before you get there. That's super valuable.
Rec therapy fail one day was that we were running a program at a community center.
We all have fails.
It's fine. Okay. We missed it. And they had they were to promote physical activity, but they were like video games, and you sat on the bike and you rode it and you watched the screen and you ride through whatever. And we had a whole group of kids with autism, and they were upstairs, and we knew they were there. We just didn't think about it. And then we had kids that could care less about our program, but were obsessed with those video games up there, right? And so we had to work around that because we'd booked the space already, right? Like we were there. And so, using that as a reward. So, for the last 5 minutes, once we get through our activities, then we can go upstairs and play the video games. But that's an example of, we didn't even pick up on that, right? But they were very stuck on those video games.
And I think those are, she said it was a rec therapy fail.
Hashtag.
That's something that actually hasn't been discussed very much today, and I thought it might come up a little bit in the panel, but it didn't. In terms of areas for improvement, and we've all made mistakes or forgot something like, doing a site visit beforehand, and or you get somewhere where you've done the site visit and, hey, by the way, actually so sorry, but our accessible washroom's broken today.
Elevators out of service.
Right? And so you need to be able to problem solve. You need to be able to be creative and find different ways to make sure it's a success.
No. We have one facility where the back door to the gym is an emergency exit. So when you open it, the alarm in the gym sounds. So we just put a hockey net in front of it. We weren't breaking any rules, and the coordinator, that hockey nets are in the gym. So we just kind of blocked access a little bit, just so that it wasn't as an obvious target to run out of, and that solved our problem. So it like Emily was saying, be creative, and also ask for help and use the resources that are available to you.
And with the hand sanitizer thing, that has been a hot button issue in probably the last 6 months of my life, is hand sanitizers. And so can you block them for the 5 minutes it takes the client to enter the building, and then have a volunteer, have a city staff, have whoever go and either put the things back in or take the tape off, and just so they're able to get in the gym, or only do the ones that are directly affected. Like, we were taking them out of lots of them, but we were only doing them in the spaces that we were going to be in, to avoid kind of tampering with the hand sanitizers.
If somebody's having trouble with a particular skill, how are you going to actually teach them how to complete it? And so we're going to prompt them. We're going to help kids through what they need help with. And especially for autism, there's people think that you should be hands off and not touch because there may be sensory issues, and that's not necessarily the case. If you are respecting somebody's space, as you should with anybody, if you tell somebody, hey, I'm going to help you, I'm going to take your leg, I'm going to help you kick this soccer ball, and then they can be successful in that, that's way more valuable than letting them fail over and over and over again. No, inside your foot, inside your foot, inside your foot, and they can't turn their foot enough. If you just go and turn their foot for them, and then they have that success, that's really valuable. So there's some strategies on how to effectively prompt athletes or kids with autism and or any developmental delays. But if you want more training on it, definitely, like Emily was saying, we do a big part of our training on this. So if you're interested in this, come talk to me after. So I'm just going to whip through it really quickly. But learning how to be an effective prompter is very, very valuable in your setting. So this is where you may find it valuable to have an extra set of hands, a volunteer or an assistant coach that can help your athlete through a certain skill when they actually need that hands-on guidance. And as coaches, you're constantly prompting your athletes. You're all the time, you're prompting and you're helping, but being aware of a systematic approach and how you can fade out that help so that you can see that athlete become independent in the skill is really valuable. So it's more of awareness rather than a lack of skill. You are already doing these things, but how can you be more systematic in your approach? So this is a prompting hierarchy. So on the bottom of the hierarchy, and this is, if you're taking notes, might be something you want to just write down. At the bottom, we have a full physical prompt all the way up to a natural cue or independence. So what that means is at the bottom of the hierarchy, if you are teaching a kid to kick a soccer ball and you're doing a full physical prompt, that's taking the child's leg and actually physically manipulating it to kick the ball. You're doing it for them. But they're still being successful in that. They're still feeling that motion in their bodies. They're starting to understand the language between kick and, oh yeah, that's what I do when the ball's at my foot. And then all the way up to independence or natural cue would be the kid comes into the gym, they see a soccer ball in there, and they know to go and kick it. So how you fade out those prompts to become independent is something that I'd love to spend hours on and talk to you about, but we just don't have the time today. But you can see they're fairly self-explanatory, but how to deliver those effectively is something that is super valuable.
So our next slide is all about giving feedback and reinforcement.
So you've broken down a task, you've gotten out ahead of all the issues that might come up, and you have a kid participating well. They're making a good effort to kick the ball with the inside of their foot. So how do they know if they're doing the right thing or not? And that's up to you as a coach. or a volunteer or an extra set of hands or whatever your role in that setting, to give that feedback immediately after success so they know, okay, I've done the right thing. And how that feedback looks has to be specific to that kid, and you would get to know what feedback to give when you're building rapport with them, when you're getting to know what they like and what works for them. That's how you're going to use feedback effectively. So I just want to show you this quick video.
Very quick.
It's like 10 seconds. Yeah, we can watch it. So that's me at water polo, cool hats. So this kid, you can see that I actually prompt him. I point to the net. He had actually taken weeks just to learn how to throw the ball. Every time I had to full physical prompt his hand, and I'd come up behind his hand and I'd hold the ball for him and we'd throw it together. So once he learned how to throw, now he was, when I'm saying shoot, I could see the hesitation. Where do I shoot? So I prompt. I point to the net so that I want to see success in this kid. And he does it, so I want to reward him. And I don't know if you guys noticed, I say good job, nice shot, and I also give him a little squeeze. Because I knew for this kid that he liked that extra sensory input. So that was a valuable little bit of feedback right after he completed this skill. And then after this, what you don't see is now he knows what shoot means. That means I throw it at the net. So learning how to prompt and then give that feedback will be super helpful in getting kids to know what they're doing right. Yeah, you need to use a reward that's effective for your athlete. Sometimes cheering isn't effective, or saying good job.
Or high-fiving
yeah.
isn't effective.
So you can't just yell, good work, nice shot, for a kid who maybe doesn't understand that. Or actually in water polo, I was like, one kid did such an awesome job, and I totally celebrated for him, and he goes, can you be quiet, please?
I've had that
And I was like, yeah. And I was like, all right. So the next time you did, I gave him a silent thumbs up, and that was more valuable than a big cheer. So that feedback has to be specific to that kid.
Also specific to the action that they're doing.
Yeah.
So if you say good job, it doesn't really mean anything. But if you say good job kicking the ball with the inside of your foot,
Yeah.
then it actually means something. They understand what they're getting the feedback for.
An effective reinforcer or effective feedback is provided immediately after they do that skill. So if you let too much time lapse between the skill that you're trying to develop and telling them they did a good job, or whatever sort of feedback you figured out has worked for your kid, then it could be, oh, I kicked the ball and then I walked over here and you're telling me good job, so maybe I did a good walk from here to there. So it has to come immediately after, and provide that frequently until the kid has independence in the skill, whatever that feedback needs to be, until they have it. And like Emily said, it's paired with a description of what they did right. You threw it at the net, you kicked with the inside of your foot, whatever, so there's no question.
I think in measuring success individually based on who your clientele is, right? Success in our wheelchair basketball program may be getting a 3-point shot, and success in our wheelchair basketball program, equally as successful, is getting it through the hula hoop that we've hung over the basketball net, right? And it's treating those as equals, because that's a huge success for our kiddo who can barely move their arms, right, to get it through the hula hoop. So.
Or an example is when we do our rock climbing, and some success is climbing to the top of the rock wall, and some success is just putting the harness on. And just getting that harness on and being prepared to climb is a huge success for some of our children.
Getting to
just
the
getting
rock
in the
wall.
gym.
Yeah, getting there.
Getting in the
Yeah.
gym, getting in the
Yeah.
doors, yeah.
So be aware of the goals that you have for your athletes, and it's okay if for the kid who's never done a program before, or been in an athletic setting before, them being in the gym around peers and different noises and sights and sounds, that's a huge deal. That's a big success, and you should celebrate that with them. I just want you to watch this video. This is like circa 2 years ago. This is one of our first programs. It was a soccer program, and we're doing an obstacle course. And you'll see 2 athletes that go back to back, and the difference in their independence, but you also see a really involved volunteer. Keep in mind, she had no training. She's just great. Who's prompting where she needs to prompt so that this kid isn't failing, so that they're both successful. And she's giving feedback immediately after each little segment of this obstacle course. And again, what you don't see in the next videos is that we run this again, and then she doesn't need to be there. So she's helped enough to avoid failure. She's provided feedback so they know what they're doing right. And now they're independent in the skill, and they're involved, and they're being compliant. Verbal prompt. He likes stopping. Partial physical prompt. Model. Gestural prompt. Visual prompt. Model. Partial physical prompt. So you can even see in the way we set that up that we maximize the structure by putting cones that they had to jump over. Rather than just saying take 5 jumps, they knew where they had to jump. Where they had to do the little barrel roll, there's a visual prompt to do that in that space. And you saw that volunteer, she's pointing and she's encouraging as they go through that sequence. That's a very basic sequence, and you may have some very high-level athletes, but the theory is still the same. You break it down, see where that error is, prompt through that error, and then provide that feedback, and you'll see a lot more success in skill development and also compliance. To recap, find out what a kid likes. See how you can embed the laughing cow into your program. We've done Pokemon stickers on the wall or Spider-Man targets in the net. A kid didn't want to shoot a soccer ball, so we put things he likes in the net, and now he's shooting. And those are really easy modifications that you can think of ahead of time. So embed their interests, get them to like you. Do site visits so that you know what the environment that you're going into is going to look like, what might be a potential problem, how you can modify it. Build in structure by being clear in how you deliver instructions. Bring them to a consistent location as much as you can, or a consistent body location. Prompt to avoid failure. Failure for anybody, if you fail at something, you're not likely to try it again. So if you avoid that failure for them, but not do it for them every time, you fade back that help and you're systematic in your help, they're more likely to participate. And then provide that feedback and know what is valuable to that athlete. So it's not just a good job, it's actual valuable feedback. And then be genuine in that feedback. And I think you may have a little bit more success or compliance in some of the athletes that you see in your setting. But most importantly, have fun. And if you are interested in any component of this and being expanded, talking about prompting, feedback, come talk to me after, because we're building out some really cool training opportunities for community programs. So I'd love to chat with you.